Hello, and welcome to this video lecture here. This will probably be our last of the semester, but I wanted to say hi again and let you see my face. So I'm about to zoom out. Just wanted to say hi. Full screen first. Okay, if I can manage to do this. Alrighty, cool. So, hi everybody, Dr. White here. What we're going to do here, a couple things. First, I'm going to give you a guided reading of a sample paper, and I'm going to at the same time cover the peer review instructions. So, the idea of this exercise is to help you better understand what's asked of you from this peer review. And in the process, I'd like to help maybe make an argument in favor of peer review in the event that maybe it'll encourage you to spend a little more time on it, and I'd also like to help you better understand some of the elements of a successful WPE essay here that we can use to think this through. So for this example, we're going to begin with the peer review instruction sheets, which you can see below here. There's a copy of this in week 13 under Essay 2 Draft for Peer Review, and then that link leads to the discussion board where you're going to post your draft, and your classmates are going to find someone who has not yet received a peer review, and they're going to follow the instructions for this, and then they are going to post their peer review, and you will revise your essay in order to make it better using their instructions. So, what to say? First of all, I want you to treat the peer review as a serious piece of writing. It's easy with peer review to think, well, I'm not an expert and I don't know anything about this. That's true to an extent, but you do know a lot about writing these essays because you're doing the exact same work. Also, you have tons of experience with reading and writing in this class, in other classes, and that really should set you up to have a frame of reference for what counts as successful or unsuccessful writing. And lastly, you have me and these instructions, which we're going to try to clarify as much as possible. So, um, when I say treat it like a serious piece of writing, what I mean, I'm not especially interested in pointing out grammar or mechanical mistakes, things like comma use or misspellings. That's the responsibility of each of you as writers to fix prior to submitting this paper. Those difficulties can be dealt with through academic support as well as through rigorous editing. I would love to offer you more help with that, but those are skills that you just learn by using the language, by reading and writing and practicing. So you're going to have to go to workshops for them. I'm sorry. This is a class on critical reading and writing. So that said, when we approach peer review, I want you to write a couple of sentences. I think in the instructions, what do I say? I say a few sentences responding to each question and use supporting evidence whenever possible. Think about what I'm asking you to do here. I'm asking you to make a statement about your peer's paper and then to say, this is visible when, or for instance, in paragraph 1, sentence 3, something of that nature. So you want to be able to locate the exact moment within the essay that you're writing about. Now, at the same time, we want to offer evaluative claims. So the idea is to say, what could this essay improve upon? And so let's go through and talk about it a little bit. So number 1, thesis. Leave a question about the paper's thesis. Is it clear and easy to find? Does it answer the essay question? Match it with the arguments in the rest of the paper. And let me get rid of that extra space there. I copied this from the PDF and then things got typoed. Okay, what's a thesis statement? Well, normally in a critical essay, the thesis statement would be found at the end of the first paragraph. And the thesis statement, remember, does one of two things, or both. It tells your reader what you're going to argue in the paper, and it may or may not also tell them how you're going to argue. In other words, what's the order? So in this essay, I will compare apples, bananas, and oranges. And that would signal to your reader that the first paragraph would be about apples, the second would be about bananas, and the third would be about oranges. So let's take a look at this sample essay, which was produced for my fall class in response to the same reading set, same essay question. Don't plagiarize it. And let's take a look at for the thesis. So we know it's the thesis statement, so it should probably appear near the end. Let's see what we get. On the article, The Science of Gender and Science, the authors Pinker and Spelke debate that, quote, there is more than just a shred of evidence for sex differences that are recant to statistical gender disparities in elite science departments, end quote. All the authors in the readings agree with both Pinker and Spelke. When it comes to STEM field, women have been drawback from years and years. So, thesis. Is it clear and easy to find? Well, let's see, is it clear? All the authors agree with both Pinker and Spelke. Okay, it's clear, sure. And yes, it's easy to find because it's in the right place. Does it answer the essay question? Let's go up and see. Elizabeth Spelke, in her debate with Steven Pinker, states Steve argued that social forces are overrated as causes of gender differences. Intrinsic differences in aptitude are a larger factor, and intrinsic differences in motives are the biggest factor of all. My own view is different. I think the big forces causing this gap are social factors. There are no differences in overall intrinsic aptitude for science and mathematics between women and men. Based on the evidence presented by Spelke and Pinker and all the other authors in the reading set, do you agree with Pinker that there is more than a shred of evidence for sex differences that are relevant to statistical gender disparities in elite hard science departments? If yes, why? If no, why not? So, it's asking you, do you agree with Pinker or Spelke? Now, let's look at the thesis statement. Do you see agreement or disagreement? I don't. So, does it answer the essay question? No. Does it match up with the arguments the rest of the paper? We'll see. And we'd have to go through paragraph by paragraph and see if the whole paper supports this idea that all the authors agree with both Pinker and Spelke. But let's pause for a minute. You guys have read this essay set. What's the problem with saying that all the readers agree with Pinker and Spelke? Both of them. Yeah, Pinker and Spelke disagree. That's the point of the reading set. They're having a debate. They think the opposite things. So to say that everyone agrees with one or the other, yeah, sure, it's true because they do take sides to the question, but it really doesn't make sense. It's not answering the essay question. All right, evidence strong. Point out a place where this author is using evidence in a way that is clear and convincing and clearly tied to the essay question. So let's look for evidence. Okay. In the debate, Spelke and Pinker state, and then we get the essay question restated essentially. So, is it evidence? No, because this is what's from the question. This isn't anything new. This is just the question showing up again. And is it used well? Let's see. In the article, it mentions how sex plays a role into what men and women are interested in. According to Pinker, men are more attracted to STEM fields than women. Okay, he cites studies that suggest men, quote, are more likely to chase status at the expense of families, while, quote, women give a more balanced weighting. Although Spelke doesn't agree with Pinker theory, claiming these scientists have no ways to evaluate the claim. Since it's hard to remove social bias, we're raised within either Pinker or Spelke have an answer about why there's so few women in science. What they have is respective finding about their suspicious, but no evidence or proof. So, does the writer use evidence clear and convincing and tied to the essay question? Well, it's certainly tied to the essay question because it's from the essay question. Does she do anything with this writing? No, not at all. There's no analysis of key passages. There's no rephrasing of it. There's no coming back even to a phrase like biologically based different motives. This phrase, intrinsic aptitude, there's none of that. Really, the writer doesn't actually engage with this material at all. And if you look at my marginal note here, what did I say back in December? I said this quote's too long for an essay of this length. Try to pick the most important part. Why are you including it? How does it support your claim? Pull out the most interesting part of the evidence and write about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good quote to use because it shows the disagreement that Spelke has with Pinker. But we're still not answering the essay question. And there's really no critical thinking. We taught this critical reading and writing. there's no critical thinking here at all. And if you looked at the WPE grading rubric, you know that critical thinking is really important. So this could be a place where evidence could be used stronger. So a specific piece of evidence from the reading set that might help. That's going to be up to you to pull out. But I mean, I would suggest, first of all, not looking at the same quote that's used in the essay question. If you're using it already, you could pull out maybe a very short part of it. I think the big forces causing this gap are social factors. So then you could say, unlike Pinker, Spelke suggests that social factors are the big force causing this gap. When he uses quotes, of course. This means that for Spelke, it's factors outside the control of the people rather than something that they're born with, which would be an intrinsic factor, to use Pinker's term. So that would be an example, what I just kind of said to you, of using some key terms effectively to support your argument there. And of course, that kind of speaks to number 4, make a comment about key terms. Are they defined? Use their basis of analysis. Let's see if we see that anywhere. Next paragraph. Eileen Pollock, the author of Why There Are So Few Women in Science, goes on to illustrate in her article hardship that women face in science, well as the obstacle, blah, blah, blah. You can read it. Mostly, though, I didn't go into physics because not a single professor, not even the advisor who supervised my senior thesis, encouraged me to go to graduate school. Okay, so that's a helpful quotation. It's a first-hand experience from one of our writers, Eileen Pollock, who's writing about why there are so few women in science. And let's see what our writer does with it. This plays right into what was being said about the chauvinistic mindset and perpetuated in this field in decades past. During her time in college, she knows most of the professors were male. Often she would go talk, okay. So the writer here, all of this text, do you see critical thinking going on, or do you see summary? I see summary. This is the writer using her own words to condense the source text. Now that's important. That's a really helpful step in writing. But we're not actually thinking about the material yet. We're just putting it in our own words. Look at this very last sentence here. Ceci et al. And Pollock have both had similar ideas going on. Women in science field. Ceci and Wendy Williams investigate on gender disparities with some factors that included early math ability. Okay, so this is the only sentence in this draft that's beginning to put the ideas together. And when we talk about critical thinking, when we talk about synthesis writing, you need to mention multiple sources together. We're comparing and contrasting. We're saying Pinker thinks this, but Spelke thinks that. So we want to show the difference between them. That's one way to produce critical thinking. So what are their differences, and why are those differences important? And how can we then use key terms and passages to show that? So for instance, the distinction between intrinsic aptitude. So intrinsic aptitude means that you're just naturally good at something. Michael Jordan had an intrinsic aptitude for playing basketball. I mean, obviously worked like hell, but maybe that's a bad example. But we all know those people who are really good at math, for instance. They look at a math problem, they can just figure it out. Maybe even some of you are like that. Congratulations. That's an intrinsic aptitude. It's just a God-given natural gift that some people have for things. In contrast, we have social factors. So think about social factors. You have a friend who's good at math and they go to a bad school, but they're just gifted, so they're great at it. Conversely, you have a friend who's perfectly smart, capable, but just, not great at math. They go to the same school, they don't do well at all in math because of the social factor, in that case being the bad school. So that's the key difference between intrinsic aptitude and social factors. So what you want to do in an essay like this is take these contrasting ideas and you want to show the differences, and then you want to create your own argument supported by your analysis with these writers. So what this essay question is really asking you to do is to say, I agree with Pinker or I agree with Spelke, and then to use evidence from these other sources and explain why. All right, what's a cool, interesting, or intriguing point in the chapter, paper you'd like to hear more about? So find an interesting idea and explain why it's interesting. Let's see, do we have anything here? So if we were to go right here to this paragraph, well, let's be honest. There's really not a lot of interesting thing going on in this essay yet. The writer hasn't brought in any of her own ideas. She's not taking a stand with respect to the essay question, which, yes, I'm scrolling back up to it. Based on the evidence provided by all the authors, do you agree with Pinker? If yes, why? If not, why not? You have to answer the question. You need to answer it and say, I agree with Pinker. I disagree with Pinker. So you need to understand what Steven Pinker is saying. Intrinsic differences in aptitude, right? Intrinsic differences. That's Pinker's idea, is that women just want to, have families and they're not as good at it. They're not as good at science. I'm Steven Pinker. I think this. Personally, I disagree with Pinker. You can probably tell. Whereas Elizabeth Spelke is saying that there are social factors that cause these things. So things like school conditions, how we do or don't encourage women to learn about math and science as their children, peer pressure, the fact that maybe, and I don't know if this is in the reading set, but off the top of my head, we have very poor maternal health care in this country. So women have very short maternity leaves, if they have it at all. Boy, that makes it tough to go into a competitive field like science. Social factors. Conversely, I don't know, Steven Pinker's pretty damn famous and smart. Maybe there are intrinsic differences. Really, I mean, men and women are different in some ways. So you have to pick a side to that question. Let's see, paragraph structure. There's handouts on that on Blackboard under, I believe let's see, look at my second monitor. Probably under handouts, resources, and how-tos. Let me see if I can actually grab one of those really quickly and show it to you. Boy, I hope it's here and I'm not just making this up. That would be embarrassing. Let's see. Let's see. Writing handouts. Paragraph structure. There it is. All right. I'm going to disappear momentarily here. All right. Elements of model paragraphs. Go through this handout. Oh, hi again. Go through this handout. Apply it to your partner's paragraphs. Make sure it follows it. And you have two examples here of how to write a paragraph. What you'll notice in these, and if we look at paragraph 2 here, first of all, we introduce the writer, okay? What do we do next? The text that they write, then your verb. Writes in a way that supports Waters' argument. Notice how that answers the essay question from the Essay 1 assignment. Coffer would agree with Waters' concept because Coffer has faced this. So again, notice we're not summarizing. We're not paraphrasing. We're offering an original thought comparing these two writers. That's what you need to do. Okay? That's what you need to do, is offer that original thought. And you'll notice, too, that the writer in this paragraph moves between evidence. Waters argues. So that's a paraphrase. One example she provides. So now we're pulling out specific evidence to support that claim. And then we have a okay, we have Coffer coming in here. And then we get Coffer for realizing she has no optional ethnicity. What's great about this sentence is that the writer's using one of Waters's key terms, optional ethnicity, to describe Coffer. So she's applying one writer's idea to another's. That's the kind of thing that we want to do. We want to take an idea presented by one writer in this reading set and apply it to a different essay. Okay? That's what WPE is really about in a lot of ways. So for the peer review, that's it. I think the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. I hope it is. I hope this guided reading's been a little bit helpful. Yeah, that's it. I'm going to shut up and let you get to it. Hope you all have a good end of the semester. Any questions, of course, hit me up with email.